the fucking internet!
What is the internet?
Oh, Merlin.
Grant, what are your thoughts about time travel?
I love time travel.
Do you?
It's one of my favorite travels.
If you could go back in time to any one period in history, which period would it be? One trip, one time, one period in history.
Third grade.
Third grade?
Yeah, redo that.
Okay.
Maybe pass it the first time.
All right. Well, you know what? That is the question that Super Time Force answers is what would you do if you were, and I'm not saying you are, a giant jerk with the powers of time travel.
Are you calling me a jerk?
I am absolutely not calling you a jerk.
You're a jerk.
So, welcome everybody to Rage Select. We're reviewing Super Time Force today, and this is a weird one, man.
Yeah.
I'm going to spoil the review a little bit. It starts strong, but it doesn't end real strong.
No?
So Super Time Force is the latest game from Cappy Games, one of my favorite companies. Because they got capybaras on their logo.
You love capybaras.
I love capybaras. And this is an Xbox 360, Xbox One exclusive game. The story of which is, well, let's get this out of the way before we even start, Grant. The entirety of this game is bonkers bananas.
It's fucking nuts.
It's incredibly weird. And it's got a very, let's just say, non-sophisticated humor palette as far as humor goes.
It would fit right in with Rage Select at times, I think.
I believe so. It would fit, like, a lot of the dialogue seems like it might have been directly lifted out of, like, a Yahoo chat room from, like, 2002 or something like that. So the story of this game is Dr. Repeatski... There you go.
Right.
He's creating time travel. He's a doctor. He's creating the physics of time travel. And the moment that he finishes creating that, robots just invade, and his self from the future comes back to berate the shit out of him and tell him that everything's going to be all right because the Super Time Force is on the scene. And from there, you get dumped into a little bit of training, and we'll come back to mechanics later. But then from there, you start out the game in the far-flung year of 1980X, where you save the world from robot invasion. And once that's happened, the President of the United States is so happy with the Super Time Force's performance that he gives them carte blanche and like an upgrade in funding and says, go fix all of time and space. Unfortunately, the commander of the Super Time Force is kind of an insane idiot whose plans involve things like, let's go stop the dinosaurs from being wiped out because I want to play basketball with dinosaurs. Or Medieval Times restaurant is getting shut down. I'm going to go get the Holy Grail and bring it back to keep them open, etc., etc. At that point, after you get through the opening area, the game opens up into kind of like a Mega Man stage select screen where you have, I think it's like 6 different places that you can go to. Mm-hmm. And once you've beaten there's 6 different worlds, all of which have 4 sub-worlds. And then when you get done with all of those, is it 6? This is 2, 2, 2, 2.
There's the big boss thing.
There's a final level that you go through, and that's the end of the game.
Yeah.
And these levels range all over history. There's some in the far-flung future. There's some way in the past. And you can repeat them at length. So when you start the game, it makes an incredibly great first impression with all this stuff.
It was awesome.
Very creative, super, super awesome.
It just seems like such a fusion of like everything 80s nostalgia that everyone loves. You got these references to like Denver the Last Dinosaur and Rambo and all these action heroes of the 80s. So it makes sense that it's all taking place in 1980X.
Well, it's not all taking place there.
Well, initially, that was the impetus.
So that brings us to the actual. We're going to come back to the story in a few minutes, but that brings us to the actual gameplay, and this is where the rubber meets the road. So I'm gonna describe this, but I'm going to tell you guys if you want a more detailed description, you can go watch part 1 of the dojo where we go through the tutorial. But basically, the game at its heart is a side-scrolling shooter game where you have a character moving from left to right on the screen, and they've got a jump, and then they've got an attack, and then you can charge up that attack to do a super attack. From there, you start to get to the time mechanic, because every level you got like 60 seconds to beat the level. And that doesn't sound like much, but what happens is that when you die or at any point during the level, you can rewind time and pick any one of these characters. You can switch out to a different character. You can stick with one you had. Jump back in and play the game alongside your ghost that's just replaying the game with you. So, for example, let's say you're running around and a robot shoots you. You don't see his little shot, and it hits you and it kills you. It's one hit and you're dead. You can back up time. You can pick up another person and have them come in and kill that robot before it shoots you. And then you can actually absorb the power of your person that you saved and continue onward. It actually gives you like one extra hit point for each one of them that you pick up. Now, when you start a level, you can rewind up to 30 times. You can rewind infinitely backwards. The only catch to that is that you can rewind and fast forward through the timeline of the character that you last played, but only that. So let's say that I played one character and I sent them on an alternate path to pick up like a power-up, right?
Yeah.
And then I rewound time and I did another character going up path A, right, instead of path B. When I rewind, there's no way to like fast forward back into the person that went down path B. You're just rewinding along the timeline of the last person that you played, which is actually really important because it means that when you're picking up these little collectibles, if you accidentally do something like, say, too soon with one character, and then you need another character to catch the thing that person blew up, because you'll blow up stuff and these little time glorbs will come out of them. And you want to...
Sounds so crazy.
I know. You want to catch it, but sometimes it's like you're scrolling left to right, you shoot a barrel that blows up, and the time glorb will fly to the right of the screen, like forward from where your character is. So what you want to do is you want to rewind, and you want to try to get a character in front of the character that blew up the barrel. But if you weren't paying attention and you did that too fast, you didn't pause for a second before you did it, what you'll end up doing a lot of times is rewinding even further to try to race your character faster forward in the stage to be able to catch this thing.
Yeah.
So there were some places in this game where I just ended up with what was a direct clusterfuck of like
40 guys running together.
Yeah, 12 different guys all blowing up the same thing, trying to catch this one little power-up.
Awesome.
So that's the basic structure of the game is if you save a person, you get an extra hit point. You also get to use their special attacks. So you've got like a guy with a machine gun and a person with a sniper rifle. Say the machine gun guy dies, then you get him with a sniper rifle person. Then when you do the charge shot, it does both the sniper rifle and the machine gun at the same time. But if you rewind, you lose all those power-ups. So there's a fair amount of actual complexity to
and
how you run through the levels.
Adding on characters that can do stuff from your selection pool. Like, what does it kind of get up to? Like about 16 people or so?
There's a lot. You start with 3. You start with Jean Rambois, Amy McKillen, and Shieldy McBlockerson.
Shieldy McBlockerson.
But like in the very first, and so Jean Rambois, he's just like a normal shooting guy. Amy is a sniper, and then Shieldy McBlockerson has a shield that you can deploy to save your other characters.
Yeah.
And then very early on, like in the first level, you get to a place where there's a robot that's about to kill Jeff Leopard because it's 1980X. And if you can get and kill that robot, you can save Jeff Leopard and add him to your team. So every one of the time periods that you go to has another character, like you're talking about the dinosaur. There's one kind of road warrior. Part of the whole charm of the game is finding these characters and rescuing them. And once you have them, then you can switch between them as well. So you'll have a whole bunch of different characters that you can go through.
Yeah.
In addition to that, there's also, like I was talking about the little glorbs, right?
Glorbs.
So every level in the game has 10 different glorbs. And when you pick up a glorb, it gives you an extra rewind. So you got 30 rewinds, and you pick up one, and it gives you 31 rewinds, right? Okay. I usually ended up wasting so many rewinds trying to get all the glorbs that it would have been easier just to run through the level. But once you get a certain number of glorbs, you get 50% and 100% of all of them in the game. You unlock some other characters there. There's also these little another mechanic that I'm sorry I forgot to say is that sometimes when you rewind, you'll see these little glowing things in the air, and if you shoot them, then it slows time way down. So you have a chance with that character to go really slowly, which is really interesting because when you go back and you're going back through that section, that character ends up running super fast because you're not going slow. They're going super fast. So you've got those to pick up, and then you've also got these little things that'll add an additional 10 seconds to your timer. And then lastly, there are these guys called the Lookers, I think, or the Watchers. I think they're called the Lookers, actually, where
There were a couple of lookers, I think.
towards
Very sexy.
towards the end of the level, you'll find these things, and what'll happen is you hit them,
Yeah.
and then it'll add like a secondary timer to your clock, right? So
It just
then-
bumps up your time.
No. Like, say you've got 15 seconds left before the end of the level, right?
Okay.
You hit a looker, right? You hit them, and then it'll put up on your clock like negative 10 seconds. So you rewind all the way back to the beginning of the level, and what you then have is you've got how much time you've picked up, like say 80 seconds to finish the entire level,
Yeah.
but you've got 30 seconds to get from the beginning of the level to the end of the level where that looker is and pick him back up again. Those were very difficult. That's where the difficulty really spikes, is getting through the entire level that quickly is very, very, very challenging. Even with the rewinds and stuff, it's very challenging to get from the beginning of the level to the end of the level to pick those up. So every level has 10 glorbs. It has 3 of the little time dilation things, and it has 1 looker. And if you do all that and get to the end of the level, then you get a big badge for the level. And if you pick up all those, you unlock more and more characters that have more and more special powers.
Okay.
All right. That's the game, right?
That's a very complex game. It started off being described so simply.
Yeah, it's like that, right?
So much going on, and it's such chaos.
Yes. Now, let's get to the biggest problem of this game.
Okay.
And this is going to sound a little weird because it's not necessarily like it doesn't break the game or anything, but if you're an experienced game player, such as myself,
You are.
this game, at least on the default difficulty level, or the way it comes, is ridiculously easy. If all you're trying to do is get through the level to the end of the level, very, very simple. You've got 30 tries, right? And as long as when you get into the habit of figuring out how to save your characters and like you'll get to places where you'll have the path diverges and you have one character go.
Sure.
Every time that you end up having to backtrack, you just rewind and pop a new person so you always have plenty of time on your clock. It is a very, very, very easy game as far as I'm concerned. Like, you could actually, a skilled player, like if you weren't concerned with picking everything up, you weren't concerned with making sure that you had a really, really super awesome time, there's plenty of levels where you could just go through the entire level with probably almost 1 life if you were very careful with it, right? Because it's just old school, like NES Contra rules.
Sure.
So if you were used to that kind of thing, that sort of side-scrolling thing, it's not really all that difficult to get to the end. Like, I never had a serious problem with any level. Like, there were times where I had a serious problem finding every collectible in the level, but not just getting to the end and beating the boss and then being done.
Now, let me ask you, are you being a jerk right now because of how terribly I played?
No.
Are you calling me out? Like,
I'm not.
Even a simpleton could get through this, and
Nope.
I died so many times.
No, the thing is that what it is. Okay, I'll tell you what it is, and this is. I feel like this is a very legitimate criticism for this game. Every level in the game is set up almost the exact same way.
So it doesn't advance in difficulty as you progress.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. Like, it's not like it would be something if at some point you started to run into, like, say, enemies that weren't affected by your time, right? Like an enemy that was persistent, that even if you rewound time, it didn't rewind that enemy. You have to deal with them continuing to move forward even when you're moving the clock around.
Yeah.
Or levels where, like, say you had a few switches, right? So you needed to send your duplicates in to hit all 3 switches at the exact same time to open the door for a 4th duplicate or something like that. Like, there just wasn't very much variety. I mean, there were a few places in the game where things like that happened, but they were kind of few and far between. For the most part, you're looking at a straight-up action game, which once you have all these different characters that all have a lot of different powers, you could just pick whichever one is relevant to that situation and just keep moving forward, right?
Yeah.
The bosses are probably the hardest part in the game, and the only reason for that is because the bosses, like, say, let's just pretend that you have like a giant circle, like like we saw at the end of the first level. It's a giant like mech, right? Mm-hmm. And he comes out and he has 4 weak points that you have to shoot to open up the weak point in the middle of him, right?
Yeah.
So you get 4 of your duplicates to shoot those weak points, and then you set 1 up, and then you start doubling them up to shoot at the exposed weak point. What happens, though, is as you have more and more guys shooting at that exposed weak point, it actually closes that weak point faster. So now your guys are shooting at nothing. Your duplicates are shooting at literally nothing that entire time. So on the bosses, there's some difficulty in just making sure that you're putting your people in a general enough position so that even when the boss behavior changes, you can still manage to hit it. Even then, not really a serious problem.
So do you think that as a matter of the fact that they set up the gameplay to allow you to have the user's choice of selecting any level at the
any
same time, like the Mega Man kind of screen?
Yes.
That crippled the gameplay?
In a way, yes.
Okay.
Like, even if you look at what you're talking about with Mega Man, right? Like, Mega Man had the strategy of starting with this stage and getting that boss's weapon because that boss's weapon was good for that stage, which would get you then this thing.
True.
Right? This isn't like
You
that.
need Crashman for Woodman and shit.
Exactly. You can't. This isn't like that because they. I guess that they maybe just didn't want to like put you in a position where you fucked yourself essentially by going to a level before you're supposed to go there. But
did you find that like if you were trying to be a completionist, that some of those advanced skills might allow you to go back to a certain level and replay it?
Once again, I feel like there was an opportunity that was missed here because it's like that could be entirely possible. Like if you had characters like this character has a double jump, right?
Sure.
Or this character has a faster movement speed. Or say this character can get hit once and still survive even in their default state.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they had depth to the character in that way, I feel like it would have given you a lot of incentive to if they just would have done exactly what you said, is set up levels where you can't actually get anything in the level until you go and get this person. Like, say there's a door here. That door can only be opened with the shotgun, right? And so there's 2 shotgun characters, and if you get one of them, then you can go back, you can open that door. That'll allow you access to this. As it is, they're so straightforward that once you get done playing a level, there's really not much reason to go back outside of collecting everything, right?
Yeah.
And replay it. It's not like there's nooks and crannies that you didn't get to. There's also, and I know that I'm a big fan of upgrade mechanics, there are no upgrade mechanics. Every character has a regular shot, charge shot, jump. And so at a certain point in the game when you're dealing with just the generic enemies on the level, it almost felt like I was just changing arbitrarily. Like didn't matter. Doesn't matter. Everybody's got a gun. Everybody's got some kind of charge shot that's relatively useful. Like in the beginning they show you that Jeff Rambois, he has a spread shot, 3-shot, right? Amy McKillen's sniper rifle can shoot through walls. And these are useful tools when you're looking to deal with one small problem of trying to get like a chit or something like that, right? Or save somebody, right? But on the whole, it would have been nice if there was more ways to customize your character or change them in ways that would make it more advantageous for a level. But once again, that would come back to making levels that were a little bit more in-depth than what we've got.
Well, maybe they blew their load on the whole time mechanic and they couldn't spend any time with those extra little upgrade features.
Maybe so. I also thought in the time mechanic, I would have really liked an ability to have to be able to like put a placeholder, right? Like when you're, especially in a boss fight, like you use the left trigger and right trigger to rewind and fast forward time. Especially in a boss fight, it would have been nice to be able to put a macro that like this is where the boss jumps down. So don't rewind. Let me just hit the bumper, go back to that point instead of having to rewind and then fast forward. Okay, there we go. I got it. And these by no means are like, I don't want it to sound like I'm saying this game is shit because it's not doing these things. It's just that what you end up with here is a game that makes a really good first impression. Like I said, it's almost like we've gone back in time to the beginning of the review. It makes a really good first impression. It's very impressive the way the time mechanic works, but once you get to a certain point with it, it starts to just become the work of moving through the levels to get to the next level, right? Yeah. There are a few levels like there. I mean, I don't even want to sell it short. Like there's 2 or 3 levels in the game where you have a jetpack, right?
Okay.
So it's kind of like Mario swimming. You tap the jetpack to stay up in the air.
Yeah.
There's a level in the game where there's a giant siege thing that's rolling through the level and you have to protect it from stuff. So they are doing things. There are definitely things in there. It's just that once you get a really good handle on the time mechanic, none of it ever felt truly challenging. It was more of just kind of a pain in the ass. Like the reason that I wanted to collect everything and get through the level was so that I didn't have to go back to that level later on.
So it became tedious rather than fun.
A little bit. And like when you start to get towards the end and you've got this giant menagerie of people that you've rescued, it's still a good game. Don't get me wrong. It's still a good game. It's just that it gets it doesn't change enough as it goes on to keep being fresh, right?
Yeah.
It starts to get a little stale. Now, one of the things that they do when you beat the game that I feel might have been interesting to do from the start is that they have this system where they have a hardcore mode that you can go back into the game and play with. And in that mode, like let's say I'm playing as Jeff Rambois, right? And I have Jeff and he's rolling along, and then Jeff dies. When you rewind, you can only switch to the characters who haven't been killed, Amy and Shieldy,
Yeah.
right? And if you save Jeff, then he comes back as a character that you can select, but you have to save his life. That, I felt, was a really interesting mechanic that really upped the stakes.
That could have been in the whole game and made it interesting.
Right. And that would have been really difficult to start people out with, I think.
Because I feel like that this is me getting into like where time travel's weird.
Yeah.
But you're losing some of your bros there. And I don't know, there should be a little bit more cost to that.
Yeah. I mean, as it is, when you go to the end of a level, like there's even some achievements for playing through like an entire level with one character. So when you do watch the replay for that, it's weird because you basically got like 30 of one character just jumping around and doing a bunch of shit. There are some online leaderboards. You can save after you get one really cool thing. Let's go back to cool stuff. One really cool thing the game does do is whenever you get done playing a level, it shows you a replay that has all your characters, and some of them are dying, and some of them are running off the screen, some of them are doing this stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun to watch. You can save those replays. There's an online leaderboard that you can use to speed run to try to get a higher score than other people, which is nice. I don't think you can actually watch replays from what the other people have done, which seems a little weird because it would have been nice to have that functionality to like maybe base my own speed run on like, oh, I saw what that guy does, but I can get that better, right? To develop strategies. At least I couldn't find it. Maybe after you beat the game, they let you go back and watch replays. But when I went on the leaderboards, it just was leaderboards.
Yeah.
For a game like this, and I understand that it would be a very difficult thing to implement, there is no two-player mode. And this seems like the perfect type of game for couch co-op, right?
Yeah.
Like having two people, like maybe up up the number of enemies in the level, and then like make two people try to figure out how to like, all right, we're going to do this, but then only let, like maybe one person has control of time, or you alternate or something like that. Mm-hmm. It seems like the sort of thing that would be really interesting to play with another person on the couch.
Well, I think you'll have to wait for Super Time Force 2.
Electric Boogaloo?
Yeah.
So yeah, outside of that, there's when you're in your ship in between the different missions, you can watch all your guys relaxing and hanging out and doing stuff, and that's cool. The art style, I really like the art style. It kind of reminds me of old LucasArts games a little bit. It's very pixel art style, and it's really cool looking. This is music and sounds. I mean, we're all serviceable, nothing like super big. So at the end of the day, I think I'm going to give this game. I think I'm going to give it a 3.5. Like, it's above average. I feel like it starts to grind a little bit towards the end, and I don't really have all that much desire to ever go back and replay it. So,
and it's not necessarily anything that innovative. I mean, they've done stuff like this on Braid.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is like if Braid was Contra, right?
Yeah,
and it's a very clever concept, and it's executed very well. It just, I feel like it needed a little bit more oomph to really sell that, to really make it a thing that I would want to go back to over and over and over again.
Sure.
Right? And it, as it was, I don't know if I'm ever gonna. So that's it, and that's what we think about Super Time Force. Did you think about another time that you'd like to go back to, Grant? Other than third grade?
Just that third grade, damn it.
Just that one day where, like, you from the future... Are you in a paradox? Did you come back from time and, like, slap the milk out of your hand and that made you a game player? So you got to engage the time paradox, or else how will you even be on this review?
Wow! It's the Super Time Force!
Oh, good.
Whoa, time out, Davey. If you want a girl to dig your situation, the last thing you should do is be yourself, bro. Mondo Mistako. Zach, break it down.
They call me Zachosaurus. I'm tall and I'm gorgeous. Got ladies circling around me like they were in orbit. Wanna get the girls? Don't show them no emotion. Just let the beat drop and put your body in motion.